It's your election headquarters. Thank you for joining us. I've come to the Electoral Commission, rightly said by Roland Walker, to come and meet with a deputy chair of the commission in charge of administration, Dr. Bossman Asare. It's 6 months to the general elections. The commission has set June 30 to begin to compile a new voters register. What is there to know with their instrument in Parliament also maturing? What must we all know as citizens? That's why we're here. Your questions are very important. If you've got comments or questions, kindly send it to our WhatsApp number. I am going to bounce it off Dr. Bossman Asare. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for receiving us this morning. So first of all, share your calendar with us as it stands today.
Okay, good morning to you and good morning to the viewers. In terms of calendar, let me say that on 30th of June, we have our registration exercise, which is a nationwide activity. And I would like to emphasize more on the registration because the registration is in a cluster form. And when we talk about the cluster, in each district or / constituency, what we are basically saying is that 5 registration centers will constitute a cluster. And because of that, the clusters are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 registration centers will come together to form a cluster. And we are also saying that the registration is in phases. So when we begin on the 30th, from 30th June to the 5th of July, we are going to have the first phase of the registration. And all those who are number 1 on the cluster, all of them are going to be registering. Then when we finish, then we begin with number 2 on the cluster, nationwide. So when we begin the registration, all districts, all constituencies are going to be registering at the same time. But the registration will not take place at the same time at all registration centers. And currently the commission is operating with 33,367 registration centers. And because we are registering in phases, at each phase, we are going to register in about 6,700 registration centers.
I live in Kutunsi. The exercise will start on the 30th. How would I know which cluster I belong to?
A week before we begin the exercise, which is going to be next week, we are going to publish all the registration centers that are going to begin the exercise. And the way it's going to be done, the electoral areas, all those in the electoral areas will know whether their registration centers are beginning. All those in the district will know whether their registration centers are given. So a week before the activity will begin, all the centers will have the information that the EC is starting with this particular center, or they are starting with this particular centers. And what it actually also means is that this will be published in our newspapers. We are going to have them on social media. So as long as you are reading, you are following what is happening, you are going to receive information that the registration is going to take place at your area, or your area will be the next in terms of the registration.
What it also means with the instrument that has just matured is that we're sticking with 2 forms of identification, which is the passport or the national ID. Here I am sitting and talking with you this morning. I have no national identification.
Okay, as you rightly pointed out, the new CI, which is the CI 126, it comes with, there are 3 requirements to be able to register. Number 1 is that you need to have a Ghana passport. If you don't have a Ghana passport and you also possess the Ghana card, which is the card issued by the National Identification Authority. In the event that you don't have any of these 2 cards, then your next option is to use the guarantor system. And what the guarantor system basically means is that, assuming Mama V and Bossman, we have the Ghana card or we have the passport, and your cameraman doesn't have the passport or the Ghana card, what it means is that on the day of registration in our area, Mama V and Bossman will go to the registration center and we will register. Once we register and we are issued with our voter's ID card, what it means is that we now can guarantee for your cameraman, as long as we know him, we know he's a Ghanaian, we know he's not debarred from registering by any law, and we also know that he's at least 18 years and above. And Mama V, it will be interesting for you to know that last year, when we did the limited registration, we registered 1.2 million, a little over 1.2 million. Out of this number, only 59,000, representing 4.8%. Only 4.8% of them came with either the passport or the Ghana card last year, fairly recently. 1,150,000 of them, 1,150,000 of them, over that, they came with guarantors. So in other words, 95.2% of them were guaranteed by others. And this is something the political parties know, almost all Ghanaians know. So literally, those who enter the registration process or new registrants, they normally use over 90% of them come through the guarantor process. So this is not something which is new. What
so how many? But this is different from the last exercise that was held, because that was the district assembly elections. How many people do you foresee would come with guarantors?
No, the commission is fully prepared for it. So we've printed 18 million guarantor forms. But when you look at the information we are picking, the intelligence we are picking, we expect that by the time we begin the registration, roughly about 12 million or less 11 million of Ghanaians will have will have some form of identification, either the passport or the Ghana card. I think we understand the Ghana card before the recent giving of the cards. They started distributing the cards. I think before that they were saying they had given out about 7 million. And we know those who have the Ghana card probably will also have the passport, but you will still have a number without the Ghana card, but they have the passport. So when they finish the distribution, and I think we are also hearing they are going to start registration from the 18th, which is, I think, tomorrow. And they are going to have some registration in the eastern region and some blitz across the country. So we are expecting that by the time we begin registration, roughly about 12-13 million, let's say 12 million of our people will have either the passport or the Ghana card. And we are looking at a registrable population of about maybe 15 million, between 15 and 16 million. So you are going to have a situation whereby about 70% of them have the source documents. And once you have about 70% of them having the source documents, then there is no cause for alarm. Because what it means is that 2 people, you and I can guarantee for 10 people.
But can't anybody challenge that?
No, the challenge process is there. I know you are Ghanaian. If you come with your passport, your ID card, and somebody still thinks that you don't qualify to register, the person can still challenge you. So for the challenge process, it is not exclusive to the use of the guarantors. It's not exclusive. All others can be challenged as long as there are legal or social basis in terms of if you don't reside in that particular area.
So does it mean that if you're guaranteeing for me, I don't have to show you any document at all?
This is what the commission is doing. When you are coming to register as a voter, you come, your passport says Mama Via Buaji. The passport number will be entered in our data system. We are going to have the number. When you are also guaranteeing for another person, the voter ID card, your number will be written. So in future, if we go and look for Mr. Eko, how did he get onto the register? He got onto the register because Madam so and so guaranteed, and these are the details of those people who
Is this getting on to a certain electronic data, or this is manual? There's going to be pen and paper, no, so they're going to write this down.
Electronic. So when you come, you are going to fill the form. And your passport number, we have the officers there who will assist you in filling the form. For many people, we expect our officers to fill the form and write those details for them.
So how is it typically going to work? One person, do you bring the 10 people that you're guaranteeing for at the center at the same time?
Not necessarily. What it actually means is that assuming I'm the one going to register and the 2 of you are going to guarantee for me, when it's my turn, you just have to show up. So let's say I can be in the queue, and when I know it's my turn, I can just call you to quickly come. And we are also going to have what we call the cheat system, where when let's say it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and you are not able to register, we'll give you an indication that tomorrow at this time, when you come, you'll be able to do it. So basically what it means is that when it gets to your turn to register, the details of your guarantors will be made available, and they will be there. And we are hoping that the way our kids are working very, very fast, we expect that once people come and register, it shouldn't take that very long. Because we are anticipating that on the average, we'll be registering about 100 people a day. Some places we should be able to do 150 or even more.
Let's go back to the cluster issue, and please explain. So 5 registration centers in a cluster. A cluster will be within a constituency or within a specific community? How does it work?
No, I think from the start we have 275 constituencies. some of the constituencies are also districts. So this is what the commission is doing. When we go to, let's say, Ayawaso South, all the registration centers are going to be clustered. So we are going to 5 will constitute 1 cluster. So when we have 50 registration centers, we are going to have 10 clusters. So when we have 100 registration centers, we are going to have 20 clusters, because 100 divided by 5 is 20. So what this means is that each district is going to have the cluster system. So when we begin the registration, your district is registering, my district is registering, his district is registering. But we've done the cluster in such a way that, let's take where Joy FM, where Joy TV, where you are operating from. Kokomlemle. All the registration centers in that area, let's say nearby the premises of the multimedia, all of you will be in cluster 1, in the various clusters. So once we begin the registration, all of you in that enclave will be registering. When we finish, then we move to the Tesano area. So the way the commission is doing it in such a way that we are not going to start at your place, then the neighboring place we won't start, so that those people will think that they won't come there and they will come to your place. So we want to make sure that when we begin, all of us in that enclave, in that neighborhood, registration will be taking place for all of us.
And how many days would it take? Let's just take the cluster that you've created virtually in the Kokomlemle area where we work.
What the commission is saying is that for each cluster, when we begin the cluster becomes like a phase. For each phase, we are going to use 6 days. So when we begin at Kokomlemle, that all the polling stations around or the registration centers around, we are going to spend 6 days. After 6 days, then we move to the Tesano area. After that, then we move to the Achimota area within the same district.
Okay. So, but you just said a while ago that you want to begin at the same time with the neighboring areas, so they don't all rush to where we are to register, thinking that they will be left out.
Yeah, so what it actually means that your neighborhood could have as many as 4 registration centers and 5 registration centers. So assuming we are the registration center, you are number 1 in the cluster, I'm also number 1 in the cluster, he is number 1 in the cluster, she is number 1 in the cluster, in that same neighborhood. So when we begin, all of us are going to begin. I normally use this place as an example, the King of Kings School at Jowolo. At that school, we have 4 registration centers. So what the commission is doing is that for these 4 registration centers, they are going to be in different clusters. And each of them will be, let's say, number 1 or number 5. So when we begin, all those who vote at that particular place, they are going to register at the same time. So that there will be no incentive for you to say that these people are registering and we are not. So all of us are going to join them. And that will increase the numbers at certain registration centers. So what the commission is doing is to ensure that there will be no incentive for you to say, I'm not registering at my place, but I want to go to another place.
I wonder if this is how the issues were explained yesterday as the Electoral Commission chairperson appeared before the Special Budgets Committee of Parliament, because we've had the minority leader come out to say specifically on what you have explained. He says that the EC intends to face the registration exercise, 6,300 registration centers, and specifically he says that troubles his heart because Article 42 will not be observed in essence through making available to the Ghanaian people legitimate rights they are entitled to. So I checked Article 42, which says every citizen of Ghana of 18 years of age or above and of sound mind has a right to vote and is entitled to be registered as a voter. That's in a public election and referendum. So how does that work? Do you understand where he's coming from?
No, I think the minority leader didn't understand our explanation yesterday. We only said the registration will be in phases, as I explained to you, because we have 33,367 registration centers, and the kits we are using, the kits are very expensive. So the commission thought that it wasn't prudent to use taxpayers' money to procure an item which you are only going to use for about 1 week. Then you don't need it again till next year. So instead of registering at the same time at all centers, what we are doing is that we start here. When we finish, then we move here with that same equipment. Because these are kits, you only need them for the registration. Apart from the registration, you don't need them for any activity. So what we basically said was that of the 33,367 registration centers, we have divided them into 5. So at each phase of the registration, we are going to register in 20% of the registration centers. So when we go to, let's say, Ayawaso North, Trobu, Amasaman, etc., what we are doing is that 20% of the registration centers will be in the first phase. The second phase, we move into another 20%. The third phase in that order. So what we said was that at each phase, we are going to be registering in about 6,700 registration centers. And when we do that, by 5 weeks' time, we would have covered every registration center. And after that, we will also have some 3 days of mop-up. So assuming you turn 18 on the 30th of, let's say, July, but when we started at your place in June, you have not turned 18. So by the time it will get to the mop-up, you would have turned 18, and you qualify to register to vote in 2020.
But the mop-up exercise will not be carried out in phases.
The mop-up is not in. The mop-up is simultaneous, and the commissioner said we have 6,272 electoral areas. So the mop-up will be done simultaneously. So the mop-up will not be a specific registration center. So let's say all the registration centers in the Kokomlemle area, all of you there who are not able to register, go to multimedia. We have a center there for you to register. So we'll do it in such a way that it will not be like somebody turned 18 in the north, he wasn't able to register. But you turned 18 in Greater Accra, you were able to register. It's going to be at the same time.
One of the other issues that Mr. Idrisu came up with was the fact that he explained that data synchronization and data harmonization, the question that they put up, all the answers were not satisfactory. So he says, for instance, that Ms. Mensah said they do not intend to use the data of the NIA. So what will they do with the NIA data? How is that going to work? I think,
Mama, let's be very clear. I think we were in this country fairly recently, and the minorities leaders party came out clearly that the EC is in a collusion with the NIA so that we may end up disenfranchising. In other words, by saying that the idea that we're going to use the data of the NIA and prevent many people from taking part in the process. So for the same minority leader to come and say now, we don't know what the point he was trying to make, but to be fair to the people of this country, if you want to use the data of the NIA, you need the CI to specify that you are going to do that. The CI must specify that the Electoral Commission is going to assess the data from NIA. And that's not what the Electoral Commission is doing. So that's not what we are doing. What we are only saying is that to come and register, show us your Ghana card, evidence that you are a citizen of Ghana, or show us your passport. So we don't need the NIA data for anything. That's not what we are doing. It's not our job. That's not what the CI only mandates. And I should think that the minority leader hasn't looked at the new CI. Because there is nowhere in the CI which says that the EC should go and access the data of the NIA. And we cannot. And by law, we are not empowered to do that at this time.
So all you're interested in is the citizens showing up with the NIA card?
The NIA card, because we are going to take the data. The EC is the one taking your fingerprints, your facial. You know, we've said in this election, we are going to do facial recognition. The EC is in charge of that. We are not going to use data from any organization.
Let's take questions, because I have said that people can send us WhatsApp messages. This one says the EC claims it's impossible to determine who used the NHIS card to register for the voter ID. And I want to challenge them that it is either they're lying or they are just lazy. All the ID numbers we have in Ghana vary depending on the digits as follows. So this person gives an example. The current voter ID has 10 digits. The NIA card, both the old and the current one, also have 10 digits, but starts with alphabets. The NHIS card has only 8 digits. The Ghana passport has 7 digits. And it says, per the above, one can easily determine who registered with the NHIS card and who did not. We've crossed this, haven't we? You're not going back.
Well, this is something before court, so I think it's not appropriate for me to comment on this.
Okay, so that's from Ambrose from Mamobi. This one says, why EC wants to register in phases? EC are only finding ways to disenfranchise people. Now that the EC sees the Supreme Court instructing EC to use the voters' ID card, okay, that has not been quite decided, and I think that he's done some explanation on this. Abladine Efiakuma Zongo in Takrady sending that message. This one says, good morning. Please ask Dr. Bossman how the EC is collaborating with the NIA to get a national identity database to help the EC keep track of all qualified registered voters, and also for those who would turn 18 subsequently. This will probably end the impasse in the voter register, compilation, and other related issues, says Stone in Kumasi. Dr. Asare says you're not interested in their database.
No, that's not what we are doing. But if there is a process, somebody challenges your registration, and you came up with you brought the Ghana card, there is a committee that is set up, what is called the District Registration Review Committee. So assuming somebody challenges the validity or authenticity of your card, and the committee is doing its investigation, it's very likely they will consult the organization that produced that particular card.
Okay.
And that one is a different thing altogether. It's not like we are going to assess that data.
Okay. Here's Ohine Yabua says, if old voter IDs are used to acquire Ghana cards and Ghana cards are used to register for new voter IDs, then what is the need to get a new voter register, since invariably the same people with the old voter IDs will go through Ghana card registration and reflect on the new register? Is it another bridge we've crossed already?
I think the question is not, I don't think it's a correct question, because the voter's card was not the main requirement to get the Ghana card. So I think he needs to educate himself well on that.
This one says birth certificates were used for acquiring the NIA cards. I want to understand why the NIA cards would be acceptable whilst the birth certificates will not be accepted.
I think people must understand that the Electoral Commission is saying that the card you bring must bear your picture. The card you bring. So, Mama, when you are coming to register, we want a card that bears your picture. So we look at the picture. So a photo identification. So that's why we use all cards we have been using. Sometimes when we use the National Health Insurance, your picture embedded. The voter ID, your picture embedded. So once it doesn't have, but it doesn't mean your birth cert is not relevant. When it comes to the District Registration Review Committee and people are checking ages, etc. But this country, we shouldn't be kidding ourselves. We know people are 80 years, they have birth certificates indicating they are 70, etc. But that doesn't suggest that there is a card which is perfect. But this election, what the Commission is saying is that when we use the passport and the Ghana card, we think we are getting something which is more authentic, and something which will help us to ensure the register is credible and is made up of those who are really qualified.
Here's another one. It says, Mamavi, good morning. Please ask Dr. Bossman if the option of voter transfers will be done in 2020.
Yes, it's something that came up yesterday, and we assured the special budget committee members that we are going to do it. I think one of our officers was making the point that in the current CI, but it's not the current CI on elections that we are going to use. We are going to have a new one in Parliament to amend certain aspects. So certainly we are going to have voter transfer and voting by proxy.
So you're not done with presenting instruments to Parliament?
No, there are several instruments guiding. The one has to do, what has just matured is the one on the registration and perhaps the exhibition. The new one will be on the elections itself. So that's it. And the current one is the CI 94, which will send a new one to Parliament. It will go through the process, AG's department, prelaying at Parliament. Then when it matures, that one will take precedence over the one we have now.
All right, here's another one. Can I register by proxy if I'm currently trapped outside the country due to COVID-19? Fred, stuck in Birmingham, UK.
Well, currently, we don't have that in our laws. We don't have that in our laws. And the CI, which has just matured, we didn't anticipate that we are going to get to a point where some people will be stuck. But we are hoping that...
but to be fair, because this CI, you kept changing, and it was presented within this COVID era. So you should have realized that people would be outside the country and would not be able to make it.
No, we couldn't have anticipated at the time. And if even we had anticipated, the law, the registration, the CI registration basically specified that you must appear in person. And to do something in others' jurisdiction will require some clearances. You need to engage the authorities, and I think that will maybe also fall under ROPA, because you need you can't just say, I'm going to Nigeria to register Ghanaians. You can't just say, you need to have some clearance passages being allowed by the authorities of other countries. So, but we are anticipating that by the time the process will take off or come to an end, Ghanaians abroad. And I think we are picking information that, so I think yesterday
well, that's those who can afford to pay the amounts that has been stated. So I don't think that every Ghanaian outside is somebody who originally lives in Ghana will be able to come if they are not able to afford.
I think it's something which is very important, but the point is that under the current law, we are not empowered to do that.
So if you live in Ghana and you went to visit and you're trapped outside, you are not able to return, and you miss the registration exercise, then that's it.
That's it. But what we are saying is that because the mop-up, we are not finishing in June. We are only beginning in June. And it will go, the exercise will take place the end of
But it's
June.
for 30 days?
No, it's for 38 days.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that by the time, maybe July, who knows what is up there.
But my point is this, within the 38 days, you're not able to return, then that's it.
That's it. Mama, don't forget that Ghanaians abroad who want to take part in the ROPA, until the process goes through, etc., they've not been taking part. So they are just like our brothers and sisters who are not able to come because of. So let's be very fair.
But ROPA is a special case because there's been a court order. Yeah, so what is the Electoral Commission going to do?
Then what we have to do, where the court mandated us to ensure that we have a CI ready, which the Commission has prepared and we've sent. We are waiting for the Parliament to open the discussions on the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. Anytime they invite us, we are ready to discuss with them and look at the ramifications of the regulations in there to ensure that Ghanaians abroad are able to vote. So assuming they should invite us today or tomorrow, the Electoral Commission is fully ready.
But beyond that, let's look at how feasible it is with coronavirus around. Will they be able to take part in this exercise?
Once the Parliament gives the approval that we should discuss the CI, then the CI matures. Then now the onus lies on the EC to put it into action. So if the EC realizes that it cannot do it, then maybe we have to go back to the court. But now we've not gotten to the stage where the CI has matured and the EC is saying that it is not in a position to do it.
So explain again. There is a CI in Parliament on that.
There is a CI which we've sent to Parliament on that. So we are waiting for the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament to invite us so that we look at it. Once we look at it, and normally the pre-laying is where they will look at the regulations and make sure that everything is in order. It will not be in violation of any existing law, and it will also enhance the credibility of the process. Once that is done and all the parties agree, then it will be laid in Parliament, then it will start counting 21 sitting days. So, and once it matures, then the EC must work with it.
Okay. So is the court aware of the processes?
I think for the court gave the order that we should make sure we prepare the CI to go, and the EC has done that.
Okay. All right. Let's get some more questions before we wrap up on this. Sharif Dean from Salaga says, how will you as Electoral Commission ensure there are no foreigners included in the register and measures to put in place ensuring every eligible Ghanaian takes part? So 2 in 1. This one says, can one register with an expired passport? My passport expired last October 2019. That's from Inusa in Tamale.
Okay, let me look at the first one. The first one, how do we ensure foreigners do not get onto the register? To ensure a very credible register, it's not only the responsibility of the Electoral Commission. Our agents have been trained to ensure that if someone does not qualify, make sure you can challenge the process. Apart from our agents, the parties are also bringing their agents. And what we are telling Ghanaians is that those who are going to guarantee for others, if clearly you know somebody is not a Ghanaian, someone is not 18 years, someone is not a resident in that particular electoral area, or someone is not of a sound mind, the person doesn't qualify to be registered. So this is a responsibility of all Ghanaians, so that at the end of the day, we'll get a role which is very, very credible. If you front for someone who doesn't qualify and we are able to identify you, you will face prosecution. So Ghanaians should bear that in mind. And the second question has to do with how do we ensure all people get. The Electoral Commission is going to use 38 days. When we come to your area for 6 days, and for some reason you have traveled, etc., you are not around, there will be some 3 days which will be simultaneous in all electoral areas of our country. And for that one, just make yourself available. Our cases are very, very fast. We can register up to 150 a day. And for electoral,
so we will experience freezing.
We don't anticipate that. Tomorrow we are going to have a pilot exercise. I'm expecting JoyNews to be there to look at how the machines work from a practical standpoint. So obviously you cannot say you won't have some challenges doing a mass exercise, but we do anticipate that 90% of the time the machine should be working very well.
There's another leg of the question. Somebody else is questioning about an expired passport.
I know, Mama V, this is something the lawyers will be able to answer very well. But I know when you talk about a passport, it is assumed that it is a valid passport. So I will urge him that if his passport has expired, we still have some time. He should make sure he goes to the authorities to put things in order. But at all times, we do expect that a passport must be indicated as a valid document. So once it's expired, I think many people will have issues with it.
All right, this one says, how then, okay, so whilst the voters register saga is still pending in court, not sure about the first line, and how smooth would it be for EC when the case is ruled against them? Okay, Bennett from Mankasim in the Central Region. I guess the question basically is the fact that you have a pending case in court and you're going ahead with the exercise.
I think the EC is a law-abiding institution, so we are just working according to the law. So now the law we are working with says that come with your passport, your Ghana card. If you don't have, others are going to.
Irrespective of the fact that there's a case before the Supreme Court.
So we are working. We are working.
All right, this one says, why should a Ghanaian guarantee for a Ghanaian who is qualified by the provision of the 1992 Constitution? How did it come by this decision? I mean, how did the EC come by this decision?
Well, that has been the standard practice. That has been the practice since we began this democratization journey in 1992. People may have to vouch for you when you don't have the identification documents. At times, you may be a student of the University of Ghana. If you don't have your ID card, there are certain things. They know you are a student of the university, but you won't be allowed to access. So I think this is something people must understand, that the world is changing. So if you work at multimedia, there may be an access door. If you don't have your card with you, you cannot access on that day if you don't have the card, although people know that you work over there. So what the commission is saying is that these are the identification documents. We know all of us are Ghanaians, but let's make sure, because when you come, whatever document you bring, we are going to enter in the database that brought this A, B, C, and D.
I still have lots of questions, and I've got less than 5 minutes, so let me try as possible and read all. This one says, good morning to all your viewers. I want to find out from the chair, any time frame for us to spend out the various centers as far as the voters register is concerned. I guess there will be a timetable, so we wait for that. Ibrahim Rashid from Nkranza says, Dr. Bossman, will the EC bear the costs to convey people from different electoral areas to their registration centers, especially when the registration centers have been reduced, meaning not all electoral areas will have registration centers? We have to hint on that again. I'll give you the opportunity. Abdul Momen in Tamale says, how is the commission going to help prevent foreigners? This question coming up again. This one says, how many people at least would be expected to be registered per day per center? You said 100, correct?
Yes.
This one says, please ask Dr. Bossman what they have put in place to check how long people have to wait in queues, long queues before they are registered. I spent 3 days before I got my Ghana card. This one says, please ask Dr. Bossman. I know for sure the EC have to publish the names of people they have recruited for 21 days before I guess the exercise begins, and what time in the time schedule for exhibition of voters. Let me pause there, please.
Okay, I think I'm interested in the question about how the EC is going to transport people from electoral. No, that's not what the EC is doing. The EC is registering at every registration center. So please, wherever you stay, the nearest registration center, registration will take place. And I know for 95% of our people, the nearest registration center, you don't need transportation to get there. So what we are saying is that when it is not yet your turn in your registration center, there is no need to panic. Very soon we are going to publish the list of registration centers we are going to register at each phase. So people should be rest assured that we are coming to.
Okay, somebody asked how long would the person spend, because the person spent 3 hours getting a Ghana card.
I think for the E6 registration, this is an offline registration. For each day, we are expecting the minimum, if the numbers are there, the minimum registration to be about 100. And we are using 11 hours to register. So roughly, we are expecting that when it's your turn to register, it shouldn't be more than an average of 6-7 minutes. An average of 6-7. So in an hour, we are looking at about between 10 to 13 people being registered. So normally when it gets to your turn, our kids are very fast. We are expecting them to work at that optimum level. And tomorrow, Ghanaians are going to see it at the national level. So we do anticipate that when you are in the queue, and because of social distancing, we are anticipating that we wouldn't have more than 25 people in the queue at any point in time. So for those 25 people, I think in about 2 hours at most, we should be able to clear them. Unless, and this time what we are doing is that the picture is not an ordinary picture we are taking. The picture will also be used for verification purposes in instances where your fingers are defective or they are worn out. So the picture must meet a certain quality. So it's not like you just come and we take you. No, it's not going to be like that.
So how long am I going to spend taking a photograph?
I think for some people, the picture must meet a certain standard. And during our nationwide pilot in the region, we noticed that for some people, in 30 seconds, the picture will be taken. For some people, in about 1 minute, the picture will be taken. Some go to about 1 minute, 30 seconds exit, because the picture must meet a certain quality to qualify to go through the verification process.
Okay, somebody's asking, has the Commission taken the pandemic situation into consideration for this exercise? If yes, what are they?
We have. At all our registration centers, we are going to provide thermometer guns. And we are working with the Ghana Health Service to provide us professionals who are going to be doing that. Apart from that, all our centers will have the Veronica buckets with the soap, the water, everything will be there. Apart from that, the Commission is even contemplating the idea of having some face masks available at areas where some people don't have. But we also understand that it is now mandatory. Every Ghanaian is supposed to. So we expect that everyone who will be allowed at the registration center must come with the face mask. And all our officials, sanitizers are provided. All our officials will be in appropriate personal protective equipment.
Okay, here's a last question. If my temperature is taken during the registration and it's found out that my temperature is about 37 degrees Celsius, and for that matter, I am taken away for COVID-19 test and tested positive, if by the time I am recovered, the registration has ended, does it mean I am not going to vote during the December elections? That's Lawrence in Nkonya asking.
We are hoping that Lawrence, we are hoping that it's not going to get to that level for all our people. But the reality is that we are working with our health professionals. Whatever they advise, we are professionals when it comes to election management. Whatever the health professionals will advise, that's what we are going to do. And we should also understand that when your temperature exceeds, let's say 37, 38, 39, etc., it doesn't necessarily suggest that you have contracted something. But I want to assure Lawrence that whatever is necessary for the Commission to do to protect ensure the safety, protect the life of all Ghanaians. That's what the Commission is going to do.
Somebody also asked about publishing persons you've recruited. I'm not clear, but
this is something at the district level they've given them to the parties. So the parties are, when we've had instances where some of the parties have petitioned that they know some of the people belong to certain parties, A, B, C, and D, and in those instances, committees were set up, and some of them have been are no longer working for us.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bossman Asare, well, Dr. Bossman Asare, indeed, I am grateful for your time. Thank you for answering as many questions that we could ask. We're grateful that you forwarded your questions to us as well. And I'm sure this is just the beginning. Once the exercise itself has not started, we'll have many more conversations.
We'll have many more. What we are telling Ghanaians is that everyone will be registered as long as you avail yourself. You know, registration is not compulsory, but as long as you avail yourself, either through because you have the card or others must guarantee for you, everyone is going to be captured. And on an election too, will ensure that everyone who wants to vote will also be given the opportunity to vote.
We thank you for your time. You're watching your election headquarters. Stay with us.